So here's a landscape I want to paint. I already masked out some tree trunks with masking tape, and then I used masking fluid to mask out the snow on the top of the mountains. It's a Lake Tahoe landscape is what it's going to be. Push this over since this is a little bit bigger for painting. And I'm going to start with the sky. So I'm going to wet the sky. I already have my colors. I'm going to use my Manganese blue and some French Ultramarine blue, maybe a little bit of Cobalt Violet. I'm using my Daniel Smith watercolor palette, which, you know, I'm testing out those colors, so it's a little bit different than what I'm used to. So let me just get some of that Cobalt Violet in here some places. It's it's a very pale color. It's extremely pale. And now I have it. You can barely see it on the camera there, but it's there, barely. And then I'm gonna go in with my Manganese blue. Normally I'll be using a Cobalt blue, but now I'm using the Manganese blue. And I think I want to take a little bit of French Ultramarine blue into the Manganese for the top here, to darken it a little bit. And again, I like to go in on a little bit of a diagonal, make it a little bit more dynamic. And I have to be a little careful because those trees, they are going to create a little bit of a border. And so the sky, as we know, is darker at the top. So now I'm mixing all three colors together for the top here. There. I'm thinking springtime here, because now I've been painting so much snow, and we had a little bit of snow today, and I've been out cross-country skiing every single day in the meadows right here by my house. I love it because there's so much snow that even though it's been quite warm and, you know, thawing, at least during the daytime and sometimes even during the nighttime, there's so much snow on the ground. It's like about, you know, 2 or 3 feet. That's all packed solid. So it's been fabulous. So I wanted to take advantage as much as I could. But now I think we're all kind of ready for springtime. So this is a spring sky, I think. So I'm just going to hold it like this because I want it to run down this way. And then I tore the 300-pound Arches cold pressed watercolor paper that I'm painting on, and so it has a little bit of a rough edge, and that edge soaks up that extra pigment. But if I just lay it down like this, it's going to creep back in and it's going to create a bunch of blooms right here at the edge, and I don't want that. So I'm just taking a tissue and gently pressing it against the edge, and I can see how it just soaks up that extra moisture and pigment right there. So just want to take care of that. Make sure there's no droplets on the masking tape either. So this is well worth it to do this, because, you know, otherwise you put it down and then you come back and you're like, what? I think that looks like a nice springy sky. Just keeping an eye on it. And then I'm going to paint in the water. Alright, my sky is dry and I like it. Looks like a spring sky to me. Now I'm going to wet my lake. So I put it on the side. It's easier for me to get nice straight horizontal strokes this way. So just go up to the edge of the mountains. And again, I want it quite wet. And I'm following the contour of the land in front here. I want to try and paint in the land part before my water is completely dry, because I'd like to have some vegetation, you know, going up into uncovering part of the lake here. So we'll see how that goes. I'm going to use my big old brush, and I'm loading it up with the manganese blue, which is the main color for my sky, so the lake will be reflecting the sky, so we want to use similar colors, same colors. And I like to have my strokes as much horizontal as I can when I'm painting in the lake. And now I'm dipping my brush into some of the French Ultramarine blue, because I want to have my lake darker out here from the sides, like that. And then, without rinsing out the brush, I'm also dabbing into some of the cobalt violet. Of course, I have that in the sky too, so I'd like to have it repeated. And as I said earlier, it's a super weak color. Super weak color, so I'm just going to get a little bit of that there. And take some of all that out of here. So now I'm going to go in and I'm going to take a little tiny bit of the yellow and put it into this puddle I have here of the manganese blue, and it's going to give me a lovely turquoise color, which would be the lake. So I want to get some of that in here. And again, I try to have my strokes horizontal. Of course, that way it already says water. Get some of that in here from this side. And the same here. A little bit more of the cobalt violet in. And let's take a look here. I have a tear in the paper there. That's, you know, it's 15 inches long, the paper. It's a quarter sheet. And I'm going to mat it 14 by 11, so I'm not worried about it. It's going to go off. And here I just want to make sure I don't have any of those little pesky puddles. There we have it. Okay. I think that's as good as it's going to get for now. And then, while that dries a little bit, I'm going to get my land here. I'm going to get it a little wet. I'm not going to touch up into the water yet because it's too wet. Get a little bit of color on there. And now I'm going to go in and get a little bit of that Lunar blue in the corners here. And it looks so black to begin with, but I already know from having painted with it a little bit that it changes color when it dries. It gets much more blue. It's a very, very strange color, but it's kind of fun. And it granulates a lot, and I mean a lot. So there, kind of toned that down a little bit. Can go in here, get some of the French Ultramarine blue, get a little bit of yellow into it. we're thinking springtime here, right? So, and then I want to get a little bit of purple because there's, you know, all those nice purple flowers. And some of it is going to neutralize because I'm mixing all these colors together. And I think now is probably time. Things are beginning to dry a little bit there. Need some more of that purple violet, cobalt violet, the wimpy color. I want to get a little bit more of that in, and that can go up here a couple of places. That's where I wanted that overlapping, so everything's not just straight. And then down here. And then let's get a little bit more of the yellow, so we can, yellow travels a lot more. That cobalt violet doesn't move much, but the nickel azo yellow or transparent yellow moves a lot. I know that. And then here's a little bit of yellow here. A little bit of yellow here and here. And now let's get a little bit of the French ultramarine blue in. Some places it's going to mix and become green. In other places I'm hoping that I can get it to be a little violet, because it represents the wildflowers. And it looks like I need to spray a little bit. And I'm fine if I get some texture. And now I want to get a little bit of orange in, so I dipped into my coral red that I had a little bit of. And let's get a little bit more of the manganese blue. Get some of that in. And I think I need some more of the Lunar blue, darken around here, and some more of the cobalt violet. Now that things are not moving quite as fast, things are drying up there, so that's a good time to get some more of that in. And let's get some more of the French ultramarine in. I'll get some of those in. The more pigment you have, the thicker pigment you have, the more it stays in place. And I'm going to get a little bit of some red in here and there, just a few little. This is, let's see, Pyrrol Scarlet that I have here on my brush. It's a very strong color, as you can see. and it can kind of hold its own. And get some of that in here. I like what I have going on. So I'm going to give it a little bit more of a spritz. It's my dot bottle. So it'll, and now that things are drying, it creates a pattern. So I have a lot of that yellow there. So I'm just going to put a little yellow in here and there. Spread the love. And just let it sink in for just a moment. And actually, I think I want to put a little salt on for texture for the foreground here. And so I'm going to put it on here on the edge of the water. It's my thought. And I can sprinkle in a little bit here and there. Yeah. So that was a little salt action. Let's see how much we get. And then my trusted credit card. I think it's time for that. So I want to scrape out some of these ridges. And here's another one. There. Yeah, I like that. Might have a little bit more. Some little rocks over here. Wipe the edge. There's another one. Again, wipe the edge. And now I'm just using the corner to just get some little weeds and stuff scribbled up. And literally scribble. The paper's very wet. It's what they call intuitive painting. Of course, I'm just reacting to what I see. Love painting this way. I have so much fun when I do that, so kind of want to get back to that. I can have a tendency to become a little too perfectionistic sometimes, and I don't really like that style. When I'm attracted to other painter styles is when it's really nice and loose. Really, you know, precise, and I find that, you know, it takes a lot of skill, but I feel it's almost like, you know, writing or whatever. If you practice enough, you can learn. There's more of your soul coming through when you paint like this, in my opinion. All right, I like that. I like it. I'm going to leave it. The only thing I might consider doing is taking a flat brush and just make it thirsty. Squeeze out all the water. See if I can just drag out a couple of reflections, and I just really want just a couple, if I can get it. Might be a little late, that's okay. There. Don't want to get too much of that. There. Enough. Stop. I'm going to let it dry. I'm going to paint in the mountains. Alright, my painting has dried. I haven't rubbed off the salt yet. I got a little bit of salt action in a few places. Now I'm going to paint the mountains in, and I have my puddles here. I have French Ultramarine blue, the Lunar blue, a little bit of Lunar blue here. Probably need some, just a little bit of my Manganese blue. I have my Cobalt violet. I have a little bit of an orange I mixed from my transparent yellow, and then here's my Quinacrodone burnt orange. So I think my main color is going to be the Weird and Wonderful Lunar blue that separates like there's no tomorrow. It's, you know, the two pigments, black and blue. And I think I'll gray this one down a little bit with some of that burnt orange over here. So there's that. Got my puddles. And then I'm just going to wet the whole mountain. And I masked out where I want the snow to be. And so I don't want my mountains too light because I want the snow to be showing up. And I have all pretty much mid-tones. I have a little bit of darks down there, so. And then I'm going to get some darks in the trees. But there's, you know, there's going to be, pretty sure there are going to be aspen trees. So there'll be some dark markings and there'll also be some light. So, with the whole thing, and I'm just going to bravely go in and put this on. This color, the Lunar blue, separates a lot, which is what I like about it. That's too brown, so let's put some of that French Ultramarine blue and Manganese blue in. Don't want my mountains too warm. Brings them forward. I want to have them stay nice back in the background where they belong. Let's put a little bit of the lavender in too. It's called, not called lavender, it's called Cobalt violet. It's a very wimpy color, but it also granulates a lot. So I like it for that reason. Some more of that Lunar blue. So my thought is, the more I get a little color variation here, the less I have to do to the mountains later. So that's my thought. A little bit of the French Ultramarine blue. And I haven't rinsed out my brush, so you know all the colors gonna mix. Let's not get it too interesting out here on the edges. Put a little bit of this color in where I have the I'm just trying to pick up those little splatters that I get from my brush because it's so loaded with pigment. And we have that. And you can see I have my painting on the side because it's much easier for me to do my strokes this way. That way I don't get my hand into wet pigment and I don't have my hand covering up where I'm painting so you can't see anything. So I know some of you have one or two have said that they wish I didn't turn my paintings you know, around so much. But you know, that's, I'm sorry, but that's my painting style. So can't really do too much about that. And I think the upside is that that way I don't cover up. Like, you know, see videos and then, you know, you can't see anything but the top of the painter's hand. So I think it's better that I turn it around so you can actually see what my brush is doing. I'm kind of happy with that so far. We'll just have to let it dry. And especially because it's so wet, there'll be a lot of granulation. So I'm hoping that that'll pretty much take care of painting in details on the mountain, because you know they're far away. You don't want too many details. You just want a little bit of, you know, variation so that they're interesting to look at. So we'll have to let it dry before we can do the next step. Okay, the paint dried, and I think it's time to take the masking off. So I'll do that. And remember, when you're taking up masking tape, don't rip it. You can rip the paper, and especially if you go from the edge out here, it's better to go in and then gently pull it up and go out. Oops. And there it's grabbing onto the masking fluid, but that's fine because everything comes off now. I have decided. So all the masking is off, masking tape and masking fluid, and all I'm going to do now is I'm going to grab my, if you don't have one of these PBO drawing gum pens, and just take some masking fluid. I'm just going to mask out a little bit right along at the edge of the tree trunks, right where they run across the snow patches, just so I don't get any of that color into the tree trunks. It's not the end of the world, but since I have this pen, I'm going to use it. And that'll just protect those little areas while I paint the snow in. And you know the snow is going to be very light, and if you get the snow into your aspen trunk, it's not a big tragedy. You know, you're going to paint some of those dark maskings on the aspen trunks, and you would just put them where, you know, if the paint ran in, so no biggie. Okay, so now I am ready to create some sort of a snow shadow color. So I think I'm going to use some of my manganese blue and some of this cobalt violet and see if that would be a good combination, which I think it probably would be. Yeah, gives me a nice kind of lavender color that I think would be perfect for the snow. So I want to decide where my light is coming from. My light is coming from left hand corner. Of course, that's the lightest part of my sky, I feel. Now I have to think about, you know, there's going to be, snow is white, but you can't leave it all white like that. I could leave it all white like that, and you could too, but I'm not going to, because I like to give it a little bit more dimension than that, and I think I'm going to use my dagger brush. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up places where I think there will be a ridge. So for instance, here. And then I'm going to, can you see that? I'm going to lose that edge. So I'm going to say there's a ridge in the snow there. And then I'm going to give this part of the snow a little bit of color. And there could be another ridge here. And a little bit on there. So I just want to break up those white patches a little bit. And again here, there'll be a ridge. It's casting a shadow on this side of the snow. I don't know if you can see it. I hope you can. And then here. So basically the shadow side is the right side in my painting here. Now you could have a painting where it was different. That's totally possible. And then here I think this is going to go down like that. And I'm doing it very pale right now until I see how it works. So it's just a matter of wanting to separate some of these white shapes. And I'm just going to continue doing this. And then here is going to be, this side is going to be a little darker. And pretty soon, I hope that this is going to start reading the way I want it to. Alright, so I'm going to let you take a closer look. So you can see I just put in a little bit of that shadow color and broke up that whole white area so that it looks like it has some dimension. And remembering that my light came from here, and so the shadows would fall on this side. So I think that's pretty good. And then I think I want to do a little bit of dry brushing here and there to get some rocks sticking out through the snow since this is spring. So I'm going to use the colors I already have in my painting. So the main color is going to be that Lunar blue, and then I have a little bit of the burnt sienna, no, it's not burnt sienna, it's a Quinacrodone burnt orange, and maybe a little bit of the French Ultramarine blue. And you can see I have it very, very dry on a very, very dry brush. So it's loaded with pigment. And then I'm going to drag, holding my brush on the side, I'm going to drag into the snowy areas, and I'm going to go in from the edges because that's where it would be broken up, and just do a little bit, break some of those edges so they're not so hard. So I'm going to let you take a look. So I think that's pretty good doing it that way. It's all experimenting and seeing what works. That way the snow doesn't look so cut out either. I like that. And maybe some of those ridges here. Grab a couple of those and get a little bit of rock sticking out. That's how it is, you know. Snow can't really hang on to those steep ridges. So I'm just going to go around and do that. Okay, I think I'm going to leave it at that. And for me, it reads pretty good as those snow patches left over from the winter. A couple of little fixes down here, just soften that out. A little bit of shadow underneath the snow. And again, try not to overdo it. To remind myself, you know, I'm not into photorealism, so kind of have to stop. think that reads very nicely. Once the snow is dry, we can take that little protection masking off. And then it's time to paint in the shadow side of the aspen trees. So I just mixed around in my puddles here. I used the cobalt violet, put a little bit of the yellow in, use a little bit of an orangey color, everything kind of grayed down. And then I'm going to take some of this manganese. That gives me almost a green. There. Beige green. I think that's what I'm going to use. And here. There we have it. So there's a variety of really, really pale neutral colors. And so I'm going to do my usual. I'm going to take and put a little bit of water down the trunk. Not all the way out to the edges. And that's going to make the colors flow when I apply them so I don't get any hard edges. And I'm going to keep it standby, damp brush. I'm going to flip my paper around again so I can get to my trunk without getting my hands in the paint. So let's see. So I like to put it, yeah, I like that color. I think that's a good color. And then here and there I can put a little bit of that warmer in. Just to give them a little personality. And use my clean damp brush to just fade it out. And so we have to remember light sources from here. So this is why we have the shadow on the right side of the trees. Now if you're painting, you have to look at your light source and see what makes sense for you. I like the color variation I have here. Just makes it nice. And a little bit more, yeah. Yeah, I like that. So that's what I'm gonna stick to. Let's just fade it out a little bit. So there you can see, it's very faint, but it gives the trees shape. And of course on this one here and on these three we have a little issue down here, which is an issue you have when you mask out trees, is that we have a really hard edge down here, but we're going to take care of that later. Doesn't have to be right now. So again, shadow. On the right side. And I'm just choosing different shadow colors from my little puddles that I made, so I get a little variety. And then rinse out my brush and loose the edges before they dry on me. And rinse my brush again. And just lift out a little bit of color a few places. There. Yeah. So I'm going to do that with all the tree trunks. So I decided I wanted to lift out some side branches on some of my aspen trees. So I masked them off with masking tape, and now I'm just going to lift out the color carefully with a little bit of Mr. Clean magic eraser. So just like that. And once I'm done with that, we are going to paint the markings on the aspen trees. Alright, I lifted out using Mr. Clean Magic Eraser. You just want to have it damp, barely damp, and then you gently rub, and then you dab up the color that you lift out. And this is what it looks like now. I like to have some overlapping, so you can see you have that branch overlapping those trees in the background, overlapping a little bit the mountains, and just put a couple of branches on over here. And some of them are going over light areas, you can't really see them, but you know, we're going to put some of those dark markings on, so then that is going to be just fine. And I think I probably want to just put a bit of shadow color that I still have here, my little palette. Need to spray it, because you know, it's all dried up while I waited for the painting to dry. And so just find one of these kind of neutral shadow colors, very pale. So it's just nice to have a little bit, so the light's coming from here, so the shadow color will be on the right side of this branch. And I'm not going to be quite as persnickety about, you know, getting this color on. Meaning, you know, I'm not worrying too much about if it is a little hard edge here or there, because it's all going to be fixed when I put, do darker over there, when I put the dark markings on. And so just make them a little dark where they're going over light areas, like this. So just like that, so you can see them. And that's exactly how it is in real life, you know, where they're going over light areas, they'll kind of look backlit, and so they'll be more like silhouetted. And so here, bigger one, and then a little extra color on over the snow here, over the light sky. And so I'm going to do that on all the branches, and then we're going to put the dark markings on. So here you can see. Then it's time for the dark markings. Before I do the dark markings, I think I want to just go in with my flat brush and just loosen the bottom of these trees that are sticking out of the ground, just so that they sink into the ground. And the same here, just so it's not such a hard edge. And then I think the dark marking is going to take care of the rest. Just a little scrubbing, kind of diffuse it a little bit. That's all we need. So you can see, it's not so stuck on. So I mixed my colors for the dark markings. I'm using basically the Lunar Blue as my base. I have some of the Quinacrodone burnt orange, some French Ultramarine blue, and have a little bit of yellow over there should I need it, and I think I'll get a little tiny bit of the red over here. That's that Quinacrodone coral. Get that over here just in case something goes too green for me, then that will take care of that. So I can actually mix that in here. Just get a warmer color over here. I always like to have a little variety, and it has to be really thick paint and an almost dry brush. I can use a round or I can use my rigger brush. It doesn't matter so much. What matters is how you hold it. So a damp brush, barely damp. So let's get some of this warmer, and then over here. Can you see how dry the paint is and how thick? So when I do like this, it doesn't immediately flow back together again. It kind of stays like that. And then I'm gonna need a little tissue and just make sure that I get the extra water out of my brush by pressing down right at the bottom of the hairs. And it's always a good idea to test it out first. So let's grab a piece of paper here. Yeah. Can you hear that and see that? That's dry brushing. That'll work. I'll load it up again a little bit more. And let's start on this one here. And I usually start right at the bottom, because until I get the feel for it, it's kind of nice to see how that goes. There. And can you see already? Looks like aspen markings. And the hardest thing is to make sure that they are irregular. And what I do is at the bottom, I make it kind of like a smiley face, so it's curving up a little bit. And as I go up the trunk, I make them straighter and straighter, because as this is like our horizon line or eye level, and wherever eye level is, things look straight, and everything above looks like it's curving down, and everything below looks like it's curving up towards the horizon line or the eye level. So that's the idea behind that. And so I'm just gonna do all these little markings, and again I turn mine around. I know it annoys some of you, I'm sorry, but I don't want to get my hand in wet paint, and it has to be in a, my painting has to be positioned so that I can do these strokes easily and not be hampered by having to hold my hand in a really awkward position. So I'm just going to do these dark markings and try to get them nice and irregular. And wherever there's a branch coming out, I always make sure that I get a little extra darkness underneath, because that's really how it is. And I also like to get some little marks in kind of on the front of the trunk here and there, like that and like that. Because that's where a branch has broken off, and then you get this dark scarring tissue. And let me just show you also, I do the same here on these branches that I created with the Mr. Clean. And so it just barely touched down, and I'm also going to use, you can use this brush, or you can use a liner brush, but I think this one has a fine enough tip. So I like to go in and do some little dark twigs from the branches here. And I like to skip a little bit so that it looks like maybe there's a little bit of light also on these branches. They're catching the light, and some places they're looking like they are backlit, so they're really dark, and other places they'll catch the light and they'll be looking light. So that's that. I'm going to put a couple in here from the trunk. And just, I don't want to get too many in, but just a few here and there that kind of finishes off the painting. So you can see this tree, I think that's pretty well done. Maybe a little bit more dark marking there. And then I'm always looking for too much regularity, so to speak. And if I see something where I have like brush strokes, I have brush strokes going like this, I take care of it. So darkness there. All right, I will do the other trees, and then we'll reconvene and evaluate. All right, I put all the markings on, created some of those little branches, twigs up here, and now I'm just going to take my white Uniball Signo gel pen and just go in and do a couple of little white areas in the twigs over some of the dark areas where the mountains are and stuff, just to give it that little variety. And I'm going to call that finished then after that's done. And I really want to make sure I don't overdo this, because there's no need for that. And it's one of those things, once you get started, it can be hard to stop. Speaking from my own experience and my own tendencies. So, see, I'm just putting in a few little sparkles here and there. That's all it is, and that's all I want. So, trying to keep myself on the straight and narrow. And a little repeat over here. And then I think we can pretty soon call this painting done. Springtime at Lake Tahoe is at least the inspiration for this one. And should be a fantastic spring flowers at the lake this year, once all the snow we've had thaws. Probably be into July, maybe even beginning of August, that we'll see the spring blooms, and before we'll be able to get up on the trails also. So I think that's about good. I don't see any glaring. Well, there was one thing I thought about, and that was just putting in a tiny little bit of shadow color, a couple of places right here around the branches where they're coming out. From the front. So underneath here too, that side, and then here. Just so they stick out a little bit more. And I just grabbed whatever shadow color, grayish color from my palette. And I don't want, so like that. Can you see it here and here? Just a tiny little bit. And that gives a nice effect. And gives the trees just that little bit more dimension. Same here and underneath here. Okay, and one more over here. And these are just little details that I feel enhances with painting. But yeah, I think that's, well, there was one more up here. Forgot about that one. There we go. And then these branches are pushed forward a little bit. And I think that's all I want to do to this one, because I still want to keep it fairly loose with a little bit more detailed trees in the foreground. So I hope you had fun with this one here, and if you haven't already, subscribe to my channel please. And I also have a class now on Skillshare, where I'll have the link at the bottom of this video, and if you click on that link, and you go in and sign up for the Skillshare classes, you can learn anything there, not just my class. There's tons of different great classes there. You'll get the first 2 months subscription free, and you can cancel anytime, so there's no risk involved. So if you haven't checked out Skillshare yet, you should check it out. I found a lot of great classes there. Right now I'm trying to learn how to use Procreate on an iPad with Apple Pencil. So anyway, happy painting and see you in another video.